Hi guys, I hope you can hear us and you can see the slides. So, just a quick introduction. I'm Ben Rees and I'm the Enterprise Solutions Manager at SMIME. I've been part of the PKI industry now for 10 years, and some of the most common questions I get asked are, how do I protect my data or the customer's data I'm responsible for? How do I prevent the likelihood of data breaches through targeted phishing attacks? And how do I protect data when it leaves our corporate walls through things like email, Word, PDF documents? So to answer these questions and more, I'm joined today by Govind Yadav. Govind is one of our lead sales engineers at SMIME and is responsible for implementing advanced PKI solutions for our customers. He's an IT expert with a passion for consulting, so feel free to send any questions you may have, and we'll aim to cover them at the end of today's session. If you have any questions, of course, throughout the presentation, you can submit them using our questions box in the GoToMeeting control panel. We'll try and keep track and answer at the end of the webinar. You can also follow us on social media and visit our website, and we'll upload today's content to our website later in the day. So here's a quick look at what Govind will be covering. First, he'll do a quick overview of the growing risks of using email, like phishing and data loss. Then we'll have a quick demo on how to launch a phishing attack. Then we'll go into how SMIME helps mitigate those risks, how it works, and some examples of digitally signed and encrypted emails. He'll then wrap things up with an overview of different certificate deployment options. So Govind, it's over to you.
Thanks, Ben. Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the session. So we will quickly start the session and talk about some of the growing risks using email. And the best way to start that is talk about some of the stats, some of the figures that we have come across in recent months, a couple of years, I would say, with some of the surveys done. So one of the survey that we came across says that about 53%, which is a very high percentage of the users, have received unencrypted mails with risky or sensitive data which was shared over them. The recipients sometimes are aware that the information coming in is sensitive, is risky, should have been encrypted or should have been protected in some way, but then it's not much you can do because it's an incoming email. The next figure is even more worrying, that there are 21% of these respondents in the survey who are guilty of sending sensitive information out or an email, which is a clear text, a plain text email. Some of these respondents are even aware that there's a possibility of these emails being intercepted and data being read, but it's just the lack of proper solutions in place or the lack of knowledge what to do to be able to send these mails in a proper encrypted or secure manner, and in a hurry we end up doing these things. So this leads to about 22% organizations or the respondents who experience data loss through email each year. And these figures, when you see in absolute terms, percentage-wise, when you say 21% or 22%, may not look to be very, very huge, but then it is very, very significant and massive given the fact that every single day there are about 100 billion emails which are sent and received each day. So 21% or 22% of these 100 billion emails is a massive number. So this is the kind of data traffic we are seeing, where the emails are not either digitally signed properly or we don't have a proper encryption to protect the data. To talk about some more stats, and towards the end of this particular slide, we'll talk about a couple of scenarios where something like this is how real it is and how damaging it can be. 95% of all the attacks on an enterprise network are a result of successful spear phishing. Just to spend a quick moment on what is phishing and the difference between phishing and spear phishing. So phishing, as we all know, is usually a mass, large-scale attack where the hackers or the bad guys target a large population, hoping that some of them will respond. Either they will share confidential data that the hackers are looking for, or they will install a malware on the machine That's basically phishing which is done on a large scale. Spear phishing is a dedicated attack against an individual or an organization. That's why the name is spear, because the way the spear hunting is done. But they target the attack towards a particular person or an individual or an organization. So 95% of these attacks which originate from email is a very, very concerning figure. So it shows the risk, how high is the risk because of emails. 94% of the respondents cannot differentiate between real, genuine emails and phishing emails. So this basically shows lack of education. Now, there's one important point I would like to highlight. I would like to deviate a little bit. What I'm trying to do is to highlight that this high percentage is not just about people not able to realize phishing emails. There was a survey done a couple of years ago by Stanford and Howard which says that 92% of the people cannot differentiate between real and fake websites. So what I'm trying to say is that phishing concerns are not just, or people not able to realize or differentiate between fake and a real email is not just related to or centric around emails. It is pretty much everywhere. So what we experience in emails is what we see with the websites as well. Layman person cannot really figure out what is real and what is fake. That again is a very, very concerning point. 11% of the people actually end up clicking on attachments in phishing emails, which is very, very important because sometimes, a lot of times rather I would say, the recipients don't even know sometimes that what is this email extension, what is the file format. Sometimes they even see exe. Most of the email gateways block exes and installers, but some of them don't. And if it's an unknown file extension, sometimes even the recipients still end up clicking on that. I would like to highlight that it's not just the exes or the installers that can initiate a Trojan or a virus attack. It could be as something as simple as a Word file. There are even instances where viruses have been installed or attacked on a machine by a PDF file. So PDFs and Words and Excels, they look very harmless to us at a higher level, but the reality is not true. I would like to quote something which happened, recently in one of the organizations that I know. Is that an attack, similar attack took place, which had a very simple-looking document, a simple-looking Office document that we use in our everyday lives, but inside there was a macro, and that macro basically was a Trojan, and it did what it had to do. Basically tried to extract and steal some information. Now, as I said, there are other file types which can lead to these kind of attacks, but Word, PDFs are the most commonly used ones, which we see is becoming more and more norm these days. Most of the Trojan-based attacks start from this kind of a thread. Okay, so moving to the next slide. So all these figures, all this what we discussed, basically focus on one thing, that there's a serious need for us to consider email security. This is because sensitive data is being shared on a very, very large and a massive scale over email. There are phishing attacks and threats which target emails. And then, of course, this is a very, very common point of entry for attackers. Emails is something which we receive and send to outsiders every day. We have strong network perimeter firewalls, intrusion prevention system, intrusion detection system, but when it comes to emails, pretty much anyone in the world can send us an email any day. It may have a link, a URL, a portal link to it. It could have an attachment, and we end up clicking on that. I would like to share one of my own experiences coming from a security background, having spent years in security domain. There's only once in past ever that I actually ended up clicking on a link which actually had come from one of my colleagues whose Skype account was basically hacked, and whoever was doing it, they sent a link and I actually ended up clicking on that. I've never done it ever, but what I'm trying to highlight is that even most security conscious people can still end up doing that. If you talk about people who are not aware about security and these kind of threats, how to mitigate them, chances are even higher, quite high, that they might end up doing this. So I would like to, before we move on to discuss the solution, I would like to talk about a quick demo. For this demo today, I will be using a virtualized environment, which is what I see, which is what you see here. I have a Windows 2003 server for this demo. It's not a necessity that you have a Windows 2003. I'm using it for a simple reason that I need Outlook Express as an email client, which is here, which you get by default embedded into the OS. And the reason why I need Outlook Express is that the SMTP tool that I'm going to use, this works very seamlessly with Outlook Express. So I start the server. This is what the console looks like. You can go to the settings section, domains, create some domains. I did one, globalsign.com, microsoft.com, and you can have a few more of them created by clicking add. Then you can go to the user section and click on add, and then basically create users. I already have a couple of them here. So this is a configuration page on the SMTP server. You can also create new users directly from your Outlook, which is your email client. I already have a few of the accounts. I can quickly show it to you. These are just warning signs you can ignore. Here I have one, Bill Gates. At Microsoft, I have two Barack Obamas. I have net banking at HSBC, and I can start sending mails. So let me create a new account for you. The display name, I'll just have it as net banking. I click on next. The email will be net banking at barclays.com, .co.in, whatever you want. Then these are the email server configurations. You leave POP3 as default, and since I am running the SMTP server on this machine itself, I will use the incoming and outgoing mail server addresses as loopback addresses, 120.0.0.1. The same goes here, and that's it. This is the account name. You can give a password as well, and done. So I click on finish, click on close. I go to create email, and now I see net banking at Barclays, which I just created. It will be to, the mail will be going to myself. And the subject could be your net banking account. I think I might even have a draft created already, just to save time. I have it here, yeah. And I simply paste it here. And I change the, I did earlier for HSBC. You can change this as well if you want to. Or anything. It could be Barclays Bank, it could be any other URL. It's basically a fake website. I click on send. The email goes away. Should be in now. There you go. If you click on this mail, it exactly has the same content that I prepared and send an email. So the idea was to show to you how you can do it live. So this is the fake email coming from netbanking@barclays.com. I don't work with Barclays. I have no access to their email system. Still, I can create an account, send an email, which comes to me, and I pretty much cannot figure out. There's nothing in this email which tells me as a victim that this is a fake email. So I read the mail, I say there is some issue with my net banking account. I may end up clicking on this. If I click on this, I may actually go to the right website because my search engine will take me to the right website. It doesn't show anything here, but if I would have had created a phished website, that phished website would come up here and would have given me an option to enter my net banking credentials, which is not happening because this is basically, I've not created a phished website. So this basically shows you how easy it is for me to create an account and start sending email, and you can do all this. What I'm doing here, it's just a matter of few minutes. Literally in few minutes you can have this SMTP server and this email client. There are many other SMTP servers and email clients that you can use. It's that I have used this years ago. I was more familiar with it. There could be even more advanced SMTP servers now which can do even more, which can have even more advanced capabilities. What I'm using now is not a hacking tool. It's basically a very simple, genuinely, it's an SMTP server, but it can be misused the way I'm trying to show it to you for this demo. Of course, you can use this tool to send mails from many different accounts to many other accounts. Now, one important point here is that with this kind of an approach, you can basically impersonate anyone in the world, and the opposite is also true. Anyone else can also impersonate you. So it becomes quite scary that that this can happen, which is true. I just showed it to you. It is possible, and the protection against this is obviously digital signatures, which we'll discuss in our session today. So we move back to the slide deck here. So now the solution. So we spoke about the challenges, the ground reality. The solution to all of this is SMIME. MIME basically is the format that we use for emails. It stands for Multipurpose Internet Mail Exchange, extension rather, and then S here stands for secure. So how do we bring some additional security layers into the emails that we use is what we're going to talk about next. In order to understand SMIME, we need to first understand digital certificates, because the SMIME security comes in from digital certificates. So we will just cover the basics of digital certificates. There are a lot of things to talk about digital certificates. Obviously, in the interest of the time, we will not go into all those details. We'll just cover the basics. So if you have to draw an analogy between digital certificates and anything in the real world, the best example could be a passport. So a digital certificate is what a passport does, or what a passport is in real life. A passport helps to identify that the holder of the passport is the person whose name and date of birth and address and stuff like that is mentioned in the passport. So it basically tells the authorities that you are who you say you are. Just like passports are issued by the governments, these digital certificates are issued by publicly trusted CAs or certifying authorities. GlobalSign is one of them. Just to let you know, if in case some of you don't know, GlobalSign is one of the oldest certifying authorities in the world, one of the most trusted brands. So we issue these certificates just like a government would issue these certificates. The next thing that that might come to your mind is that how do a certifying authority like ourselves ensure that the individual who is applying for this is the actual person? So we do something called vetting. So there's a vetting process that goes, and it is exactly the same the way the authorities, the governments identify a person before issuing the certificate. Sorry, before issuing the passport, we do the same before we issue the certificate. Now, depending upon the type of certificate or the trust level with a certificate, there could be different levels of vetting. So, for example, SMIME, the most simplest form is to have the email address, just the email address in the certificate. So we just ensure that the applicant is basically in control of the email, and when we ensure that that is the case, we issue the certificate. We could have a higher level of vetting or higher level of trust associated. We can even have the name of the applicant in the certificate. So then we identify and then we vet that this particular person or the applicant is actually holding, he has that name, and we do more identity checks. It could be an identity card, or it could be a passport or something, whatever. We can have even a higher level of trust where we can even have the name of the company and the address of the company that he works for in the certificate. So this is how we do our vetting. So what I'm trying to highlight is that vetting plays a very, very crucial role, in my opinion, that this is the most important thing in the whole certifying authority ecosystem, because this is what ensures that the user gets the certificate and he's the actual applicant, is not someone who's pretending or impersonating to be someone else. So just like a passport, a certificate is unique to you, and it contains something called a public key. Now, without again going into the details at a very, very higher level, in the world of PKI, there is something called a public key and something called a private key. Now, when the certificate is issued or basically applied for, the applicant generates a key pair, public key and a private key. In the most simplistic terms, he keeps the private key with himself, and then he gives the public key to the certifying authority with the details about his identity, his email, the address, and stuff like that, which is vetted, and then the certifying authority will issue a certificate to him, which will contain his public key and other associated information, just like what you get in a passport. So this is what a certificate is. Now, this is just the identity you have. Now, what you do with the certificate is coming up next. You can use it to secure your email. Now, you can do basically two things with an email. You can digitally sign an email, and then you can do encryption. Now, it is worthwhile to spend a couple of minutes understanding what these two techniques do and what is the value add that comes in from these two. The very first is digital signature. When you digitally sign an email, what you get is authentication. You know for a fact that the email which is coming in is actually sent by the person whose digital certificate is attached. And I have a screenshot. I'll just show it to you in a couple of minutes. So this is different from getting an email and not knowing whether it is actually coming from a bank or it is actually coming from Govind at Microsoft, or whether it's coming from a person who is really actually is who he says he is. So this is authentication. The next important aspect is non-repudiation, which basically means if I sign an email, then tomorrow I cannot deny that I had signed it. Let's say it could be a legal scenario. An email is required as a form, maybe a tender submission or something. You know, email goes out from someone to someone else, and then the guy who actually sent it denies that, oh, I never sent it, which is possible without digital signatures, because he can say, oh, someone may have impersonated me, you know, as I could impersonate someone. Anyone can do it on anyone's behalf and send an email, and then you never know who did it, so there's no accountability. But when you have digital signatures to it, the owner of the certificate will have a corresponding private key, and using the private key you digitally sign it. So basically you cannot deny that I did it, because you are the only one who holds the certificate and the private key. And if someone actually else did it, it's your fault. Why did you give your certificate to someone else? It's your responsibility to secure it. The last is message integrity, which is otherwise called data integrity. So this means that if an email is composed and it is signed, we cannot change it after it has been signed. So data integrity basically means that once you compose an email and you send it, even if it is intercepted by someone, the hacker can read, because it is not encrypted, it's only signed, but they cannot change it. Changing or intercepting and then manipulating an email can also result in major issues. It could be financial data which is being shared, or it could be confidential data which can be shared and then changed while the email is going out, which is completely avoided when we sign it. Message or data integrity is not something which is major. We don't see requests coming in when customers say that we have a risk of someone changing or intercepting and then manipulating the email, which is quite unlikely that these things, I mean, these things can happen, but we don't really get these kind of normal use cases. Most important is authentication. People want to avoid phishing when they send mails internally or to someone outside. They want to be sure that the recipient knows that who is sending it. So just to avoid phishing and have strong authentication tied to the emails, we sign. And of course, we also have non-repudiation, which is, I would say, on a secondary side, most important being authentication. The last point is very important with regards to what are the email clients, or how many email clients today support digital signatures. I would say pretty much all of them. All the thick clients, this is one very important thing to keep in mind. Thick clients means a software that you install, like Outlook that you install on your machine, or Outlook Express that I had showed you in the demo, or maybe it could be a Lotus client that you could be using, or maybe there are so many others. All of them, pretty much all of them, support the SMIME signatures. There are web mails also. For example, our corporate web mails, Outlook Web Access. Some of these may support, most of them don't support even today. If you talk about our personal email addresses like Gmails or the Yahoos or the Hotmails, I don't think most of the major email clients support SMIME today. So SMIME, when being used in pure webmail form, still is not a very, very most widely used way. Most of the corporate mails, by the way, are sent using thick clients, and that is where all of them support the SMIME signatures. So this is how it actually goes in action. You have a digital certificate issued to you by a publicly trusted certifying authority. You use this certificate to digitally sign an email, and when you digitally sign an email, you always attach your certificate with the email. You don't do it; it happens. The client does it automatically, but it happens always. And then you send it to the recipient. Now, when the recipient receives an email, they will see, let's say in case of Outlook, Microsoft Outlook, you will see a small red ribbon on the upper right-hand side, which immediately tells you that this email was actually signed. Now, this email was composed by Julie Tillett, sent to Offley, and you can make out that this is a real email. This is not a fake email coming in because it has been signed. Now, what goes next is that if you click on this red ribbon, you can see more signature details, and it says subject, from, signed by, and if you can even click on more details, you get more details. But of course, we will not do that now. But just to give you a higher level idea that you can actually see who signed it. Now, this is very important when we tie this back to vetting. This is what I was trying to even highlight earlier, that a vetting is done. We ensure that the recipient or the actual applicant is the one who owns this particular email address, and then we issue the certificate. Anyone who has a fake email address, let's say what I used, govind@microsoft.com, I won't be able to prove that I hold or I own govind@microsoft.com, because the certifying authority would send a verification link to that email, and I won't get that email because that email, one, does not exist. There probably won't be anyone like Govind@Microsoft. And even if someone is, I'm trying to impersonate someone, I'm trying to get certificate in someone else's name. When the certifying authority sends that mail to Govind@Microsoft, if someone like that exists, the mail would go to him, it won't come to me, because the actual FQDNs and domains, the way they're hosted, the mail will be directed to that guy, it won't come to me. So the hacker or the bad guy who's trying to impersonate, or let's in this case, I'm trying to impersonate someone at Microsoft.com, I won't be able to do that because I won't be getting those emails, and hence I won't be able to validate that I own or control that email address. So this is what basically the value that comes in when you digitally sign an email. Just like we signed, we also have an additional layer which is called encryption. So digital signatures bring in authentication, they bring in non-repudiation, and they obviously offer data integrity as well. But what if you have to keep your email confidential? Now, when you sign an email, it can be read by anyone. It can be even read by someone who is intercepting the email while it is in transit. They can read it, but they cannot change it. They cannot manipulate it. What if it is confidential data which is inside the email and you don't want anyone to even see it if it is intercepted? Then we do email encryption. So what email encryption does is basically it seals your message in sort of a black box so that no one can see it. Only the individual who is supposed to see, who is the intended recipient, will be able to see that. And how it is done is very, very simple. So just like we have a key pair when we sign, we have a key pair when we encrypt. These key pairs or these certificates can be different for encryption and signing, or they could be same depending upon how the solution is implemented. Let's say I want to encrypt an email to Ben. Then what I need from Ben is his public key. And how I get his public key could be various ways of doing it. I can simply go and ask him. His public key could be published in my corporate LDAP, or he can sign an email and send it to me, or there are various ways. Basically, I need to get his certificate. Once I get his certificate, I then encrypt an email with his public key, which is inside the certificate. It may be sounding a bit tricky, but that's how it works. And once I sign, or rather encrypt the email, it goes to Ben, and then he will apply his corresponding private key, and then he will read the message. Now, Ben can distribute his public key to everyone in the world, no problem, because it's a public key, but he retains the private key with himself, and that is what he uses to decrypt and read the email. So when we do this, I'm able to protect the sensitive and the confidential data in that email, and it's only Ben who is going to read it. Now, there's one very important point that we have to keep in mind. If an email is signed, as we did earlier, it can be seen by anyone in transit. But when we encrypt an email, it is point to point. This encryption happens between one point and the other point, and these 2 points is my machine, the laptop or the desktop where I am working, and the decryption happens on his machine. It does not happen, the encryption and the decryption does not happen at our email gateways or anywhere in between. It is absolutely point to point. So the advantage is that even if someone is intercepting, an external guy or a hacker who's intercepting, he won't be able to see that. Even if someone internal is intercepting that mail, for example, your Exchange admin, for instance, they can queue up emails and keep a copy of the emails and read it. They can do it. But they won't be able to do it if it is encrypted. So the inside fraud is also avoided if you are signing and encrypting your confidential email. For example, the finance departments, the directors, the VPs who send confidential emails, if they encrypt, even if the email is going inside the organization, it's not even leaving your network, still, if it is encrypted, it helps for anyone else, part of the network team, who may be silently monitoring and maybe keeping a backup copy of your emails. They won't be able to do that if it is encrypted. And this is how it works. So you have a certificate, you apply it to the email, and then you need the recipient's public key, which I just mentioned. So I repeat what I said. I would need Ben's public key, which I could get in various different ways. And then when I have all these, I apply it to my email that I'm sending it to him, and then I send it to him. In this case, this email was encrypted and sent from Julie Taylor at GlobalSign to Ophelia. Now, you would observe there is a blue lock along with the red ribbon. The red ribbon means it has been signed, and the blue lock means it is encrypted. So Ben has to apply his private key, and the private key could be kept on his machine, or it could be in a hardware smart card, depending upon how you implement the solution. Only when he has the right private key, the mail gets decrypted, and Ben would be able to see that. If you click on the signature details, you would see there is another additional layer now. Earlier we only had the digital signature layer, now we have an encryption layer as well. So it basically means it was first signed, and then the whole package was encrypted and then sent to Ben. So this is what encryption does. Okay, so we spoke about the challenges, we spoke about the solution, the technology that is used to encrypt and sign the emails, and now we'll spend a few minutes before we end the session talking about how these certificates can be deployed. So we got the whole concept, but then the next important question is, when we actually implement or deliver a solution, how a certificate can be deployed to the end users. There are various ways of doing it. First, you can have an individual order. So you can have one individual, or like, let's say, a few individuals coming in, applying for a certificate, getting the vetting process done, and having the certificate, and they start doing signing, encryption, whatever. However, if the number of users increase beyond 5, 10, 15, or maybe 20, you need sort of a management platform where you can help, which can help you manage large number of certificates, to renew large number of certificates, to revoke them. And if someone is leaving the organization, how do you revoke? If someone changes their teams, how do you manage that? You get a new certificate. Someone is changing his name, how do you manage that? So for all of that, you need a platform, because doing all these for hundreds of users, end users, is very, very difficult if you do it manually. So then there is a management platform, certificate management platform, which can help you manage these large number of certificates. There are techniques and technologies where we can completely, transparently push these certificates to the actual end users, where you don't have to even have a management platform. So your admins will not have to log in and do something to manage those users. It can be completely transparent, and we can just straight push these certificates to the end users, and every time a new certificate is required, we can just push it. Vetting also is required here. If you're thinking that, wait a minute, we spoke about vetting, and how is that we are pushing the certificate transparently, the very first instance, and even the next year when the certificates are renewed. So vetting typically is a one-time process for an organization. So we vet a particular profile, and then every time we issue a certificate that comes out of the same profile. So which is typically one-time effort, unless something changes in the organization, the address changes or something, and if at all you want to have the address in the certificate. This is how we have different ways of issuing the certificates. These are basically different delivery channels. So we'll talk about them in a bit more detail as we go forward. Individual orders. Now, individual orders, as I said, is an individual, single human being, or maybe a group of people who want to have certificates. They can simply log on to the portal, have an account created, that gets vetted, and the certificate is issued. So long as the number of users are small, we say that the certificate issuance is instant, in a sense that once the vetting is done, you can pretty much get your certificate from our certificate issuance engine, which in case of Global Sign, you can pretty much get all of that done from our web portal. However, there are challenges with this approach. It is difficult to manage the inventory, because if you have just a few users, a couple of them, or maybe 5, 10, it's fine. You can still do it. As the number of users grow, you reach 50 or 100, it becomes difficult to manage all of them. Which of the user is going out of the organization or is changing the team, because you may have to reflect those changes in the certificate, and then revoke the certificates, and then even renew them. All these are challenges. There's a risk of certificate expiry. So when you do it all manually on an individual user-by-user basis, you may miss to renew a certificate, and then the user certificate expires, and the very next day he comes to office, he won't be able to sign or encrypt or nothing, and then you have issues because the certificate is expired, and then it takes time to get a new certificate done. And while you get the new certificate, this user's productivity is down because he won't be able to log into the network. Depends what all use cases. We are just focusing here on SMIME, but then certificates can be used on other use cases as well. Of course, it is increased vetting time because you have individual accounts, and so every single account has to be vetted. There is a human effort behind vetting, so all that goes up if you have multiple individual accounts, which is of course an overhead. When you have a situation that you anticipate your users to be growing, it becomes difficult to determine the budgets, because today you only have 5 or 10 users. You quickly go and put individual orders. Fine, you can get going very quickly. You may be doing a partnership with another company, and those users also maybe you want a secure email to be sent, and then it becomes difficult. So the costs basically go up when you don't have future estimates. These are the issues typically we see with individual orders. There are benefits of certificate management platform, as I earlier mentioned. It lowers the individual certificate cost. When you have large number of users, per certificate cost goes down significantly because you get a management platform. We can do one-time vetting for entire profile, and issuance and reissuance is obviously lesser of a cost. Not just cost associated with vetting, but the costs that are incurred in your own internal operations, because obviously those can go down. We can have, this is the most important feature, we can have centralized lifecycle management. So you can get one single console where you can see I have n number of users, hundreds or maybe even thousands of users who are there, how many of them are still there, how many have been revoked, how many of them are about to expire. You get email alerts before 6 months, 3 months, and a month before the certificate is expired, and then you don't miss the chance of renewing the certificate. All this can be managed centrally. Again, certificate issuance is instant. Once the profile is vetted, we can start issuing the certificates immediately. There's no delay. And then, of course, there are benefits when you have these benefits become multifold when you have large number of users. When you have large number of certificates also. With this kind of a management platform, you can manage the commercial part of it quite well. There's a financial and a billing section where you can see how much deposit you have made, how many certificates you have issued, what is the balance amount, and how much money you have to put in if you're anticipating more growth or reissuance of certificates, and all those things become quite easy because you get all that information in one place. However, there's still one challenge with this approach. The admins have to manually, basically it's done manually, they upload the email addresses of these users to our portal, which is our EPKI portal. That's what the name of the product is, and it typically is done using a CSV file. So you basically export a CSV file from your AD and upload it here on our portal, and then you start issuing certificates, which is a bit of a work, simply because when the users change their teams, they leave the organization, you have to make those changes in your AD, which you do anyways today, and then you get a CSV file, and then you upload. So that CSV file creation and uploading it on the portal, on our portal, is manual, and then you have to again revoke those users when they leave the organization. So these are a couple of areas where you have to do something manually. So it's a good platform, but then it has got some limitations in regards to doing a bit of the manual stuff on the admin side. The other parts of the operations remain the same. The users would get an email in both the instances. If it's an individual order or a centralized certificate management platform, the user clicks on that email. That's a pickup link, and then this keyword generation happens, and the user gets a certificate. So that process remains same from the end user perspective, but it's the admins who have to do a bit of manual stuff to get going. If you want to completely automate, if you want to even get away from the management platform thing, there are a couple of approaches. One of them we spoke about very earlier was APIs. For non-standard environments, we can do APIs, which can pretty much automatically issue the certificates to you. And if that environment is a bit standardized, we then have a solution which is the AD integration, which is automating with the AD environment. And this is what exactly it looks like. So on the left-hand side, you see something which is the customer's AD environment, which is your AD environment, and then you have a small connector or a proxy, which is the actual solution called AEG, Auto Enrollment Gateway, that understands. It is custom designed to understand your Active Directory policies, and then depending upon what you need, what kind of certificate you need, you may need an SMIME certificate, or you may need some other types of certificates as well, which the solution can do. The request goes to our SaaS CA, which is running in our data centers. We generate the certificates, push it back to your AD environment, and the end users get it. So the advantage of this approach is it connects your AD environment to your certificate services. It supports auto enrollment and silent installs. This is very, very important because this solution does not require softwares or clients to be installed on your endpoints. It can be done straight. We can issue certificates straight to your endpoints. And of course, it removes the need of your own CA. So even if for your internal certificate requirement, again, the focus today has been SMIME, but if you need certificates beyond SMIME for your Windows logon, Wi-Fi authentication, client authentication, any kind of client authentication, PDF signing or whatever, we can do that. The solution has capability to issue all certificates, not just SMIME. Last, very important, we do key recovery and archival. The solution supports key archival. So when you start doing any form of encryption, particularly SMIME encryption, you need to back up the encryption keys as per the best practice, because if the user has been receiving a lot of encrypted mails and he loses his key or the certificate, then he won't be able to retrieve those emails. Or if the employee leaves the organization and then you want to retrieve those emails which were encrypted and sent to him, you need to have a copy of the backup of the private key, which is what we do with key archival, which comes with the solution. So these are the 3 delivery channels. Just a quick recap: we can do individual order, which is absolutely on a case-by-case basis. We can do a centralized certificate management platform, and we can do something which is automated with your AD environments. We can even do APIs if that is the case. So this brings me to the last slide, which is basically how we summarize. So this is how I would say we need to recap and summarize the whole discussion that we had. To mitigate the risks of phishing or even spear phishing, SMIME is the best way. SMIME security comes in with digital certificates being issued by a certifying authority like ourselves. The advantages you get is to prove the message origin. The certificate itself ensures that the email is tamper evident, or you cannot tamper it. And of course, you can even have confidentiality, which means you can encrypt the emails and only the intended recipient gets it. So basically, the 2 key areas where we were seeing a lot of fraud happening earlier in the earlier slides, it can be very, very effectively covered by SMIME. So that's it.
Great, Govind, thank you very much. That's a fantastic overview. While you've been talking, we have some questions that have come through. I wonder if you may be able to just answer these quickly.
Mm-hmm.
One here, are there any specific regulations related to the loss of personally identifiable information?
Good question. Yes, there are certain regulations. Around this. Most important one that is coming up is EIDAS, which is going to be taking effect 1st of July across EU. And that particular regulation has a lot of things to do around the digital signatures, but it also has very strict penalties if any individual's personally identifiable information is lost or is compromised, and the penalty is about £2 million if that happens and it is proved that it happens. Okay, we have another question which says we have lots of users which use user-based mail encryption. Let's say we buy the product AG. How are private keys certificates delivered to the clients, like PCs, Macs, smartphones? Okay, so we can deliver the certificates to the users with a solution like AEG. AEG basically is meant as on date. It is meant only for Microsoft Active Directory environments. So if you have domain joined machines, laptop, desktop, anything, we can support them. Macs, for Macs and Linux and other non-Windows operating systems, we have something called a microsite where we can send an email to the users, and then these users click on that link and then they get the certificate, which is only for non-Windows endpoints. We can even support smartphones, for that matter, if you have certificate issuance which is required on smartphones. So
okay, we've got some questions here. They're much along the same line, so I just wondered if you could, if I give you a couple of questions, maybe you can answer it in one go. So we know that digital certificates, SMIME certificates, have several use cases. For one, signing and signatures, to encryption, but also user authentication as well. So here are the two questions. Can we sign the attachments as well as the email itself?
Okay, so you can use the same certificate to sign an email and then sign an attachment. However, this is a two-step process. To the best of my knowledge, the most commonly used email clients, you cannot sign the email and the attachment together with just one click. You have to sign them separately. So you first have an attachment, you sign it, PDF or Word, whatever, and then you attach it to the email and then you sign the email.
Okay. And what is the difference between password-based document protection and certificate-based encryption?
Okay, another good question. Both of these do the same thing exactly, but then the difference is that when you do a password-based encryption, you basically protect the document with a password, and then the intended recipient gets the same password. You have to give them the password, and then they use the same password to open the file. This is very, very common. Most of the banks do that today. We all know it. The difference with certificate-based encryption is that you actually encrypt the whole file using the recipient's public key, as I described earlier, and then send it to the recipient. The biggest difference is that a password-based security is prone to brute force attack, because all the bad guy needs to do is to just guess the password, and he can try a brute force. He can take the file offline and then try millions and millions of attempts. And then passwords, typically the biggest problem with passwords is that they are not very, very strong. Usually the passwords are weak, and then we can guess them unless it's really complex passwords. So this is the difference basically. You achieve the end result from an end user perspective is the same, but then the way you achieve that is different. Okay, so I have another question. It says users email account and group accounts. Okay, questions regarding the automation. What does the AEG component passes to global sign? Okay, so AEG passes the information that you need in the certificate. AEG will only gather or only capture that information which your policies, which your AD policies say that we want to have the user's email address, maybe his name or name of the department, whatever you want. That information is captured by AEG. It sends it to the SAS CA. The certificate gets generated and it comes back. AEG will not capture information that you don't intend it to go out, because AEG does not have anything. It's not basically an intrusive kind of a solution. It only works on policies. If you have a policy which says that I need the username and the password, sorry, the username and the email address to go out, that is what will go out. Nothing else will go out. Another question: can a certificate management platform be used if you have certificates from various CAs? Okay, the answer is no. Our certificate platform can only help you manage certificates which are issued by GlobalSign. However, there is something else that we can offer, which is not really agnostic to GlobalSign. We have a certificate inventory tool, CIT, which can help you scan and manage the inventory of your certificates, even if those certificates are not issued by GlobalSign, to such an extent that if you have no certificate issued by GlobalSign, you can still use this tool. But then keep in mind that it is only the certificate inventory tool.
That's great, Govind. Excellent. Thank you very much for answering those questions. So we have quite a few additional questions to answer. What we'll do, we'll take a note of those. We'll make a point of actually responding to everyone that's posted questions. But if you do have any further questions after this, please email them in to us. Thank you very much for attending. I hope you found the content and the information useful. Thanks for everyone for attending today.